My name is Heidi Peace, and I am the industry chair for the USC Cloud event for today. I am the co-founder of the Los Angeles Blockchain Lab. We're a collaboration of the academic institutions in Southern California, helping to educate, elevate, and innovate in the blockchain space. I'm happy to introduce to you today Rahila Zafar from Consensys. I had the fortunate opportunity to meet her at another event. Thank you. I had the fortunate opportunity to meet her at another event and was completely impressed and blown away by what she's doing in this space and also what Consensys is doing in this space. So Rahila is the author of Internet of Women, Accelerating Culture Change, and she's also the managing director of Consensys, which is, as most of you probably know, a leading blockchain company. Something that is of peculiar specialty is that the city of Dubai was the first government to put in place a blockchain mandate by 2020, which and I think that Rahila will go into greater detail, but a mandate to ensure that all of their paper and all of their processes, paper-related, become placed onto the blockchain. And they're also doing a lot of other exciting things in Dubai. So with that said, I'm hoping Rahila will be able to speak a little bit about that. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you, everyone. On behalf of Consensys, I'm really grateful to be invited, and Consensys is the leading blockchain company. We have over 700 employees in countries all around the world, and we're really excited to have this be the first of many engagements with USC and this department. So I'm just gonna move my computer here so I'm close to the mic. How many of you are coders? And then how many of you are aware that Ethereum has the greatest number of blockchain developers? So Ethereum has 60,000 developers and counting around the world. There's 5.6 billion requests on Infura in terms of on the Ethereum system. We've had 280,000 downloads for Truffle. So I encourage you that code to download that and learn Solidity if you haven't. And 1 million installs for MetaMask. So this is a tweet from Joseph Lubin, the founder of Consensys, who is one of the 7 co-founders of Ethereum. So I think there were some comments made previously about Ethereum and smart contracts and the cost. And just so you guys realize, every single hour of the day, the Ethereum network is getting stronger and getting better and being improved and improved and improved and being innovated on. And I don't think there is no other blockchain that is competing or any other blockchain community that is stronger or larger than Ethereum. So what I'm going to be doing is providing you a short overview of a land registry product that we came up with at Consensys and how we came about it, and kind of telling you a little bit about Consensys briefly and about some of the governments that we're working with around the world. And then I want to share a demo from a product we have called Pangea. So let me just move this to
View mode, presentation mode.
Okay. I think I'll skip some of the slides. I'm just going to show a few. So how many of you guys are familiar with Consensys in terms of all we offer in terms of infrastructure tools? We're currently, how many of you guys have heard of Uport, our identity platform? Vion is our supply chain product. Consensys Education. We provide a lot of services to governments that I'll get into. We created Consensys Capital. So I'll kind of get into a bit of this. This says 620, now we're 700 plus. So we're the official advisor to the government of Dubai, who Heidi mentioned was the first government to have a blockchain mandate. We're working with the government of Singapore. We just signed an MOU with the government of India. We have the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. How many of you guys have heard of that? So the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance has, I think, hundreds of members at this point from Intel, British Petroleum, Microsoft. So a lot of Fortune 500 companies that joined a couple years ago, and even prior to that, they have been experimenting with Ethereum. And this says we're incubating 20 plus projects. We actually are incubating 49 projects now within Consensys in financial services, logistics, energy, government, advertising, entertainment, all across the board in terms of every single sector you can imagine. We've launched Consensys Academy, so I really encourage you guys to look that up and apply. So it's not just for developers. We now have programs for MBA students, lawyers. We do things with various governments and kind of educating business analysts and C-suite within corporations as well. So these are some of the companies we work with that I mentioned. And so I wanted to begin just in terms of how we started to do our land registry project in Dubai. We were invited by the Dubai Future Foundation in 2016 to come. And a few months later, Dubai had issued a mandate to be the first blockchain-powered city. And in the spring, they selected Consensys to be their official advisor that I mentioned. And a lot of the land registry works in terms of it being not only a paperless city, that's our goal by 2020, but also it ties into the Dubai Data Initiative. So that's our founder, Joseph Lubin. And then to the right is Dr. Aisha. It's actually a woman that's leading Dubai's digitization strategy. And that's Wissam. He's the CEO of Smart Dubai. That's the entity in Dubai that leads their work and in this realm. And in Saudi Arabia, it's actually a woman who leads the country's digitization strategy. So what was really interesting about spending time in the Middle East, opening an office there, was every single high-level government meeting we had, there was an Arab woman in a leadership position. If this event was in the Middle East, half of the people here would be women because half of the computer science majors are women. So I think that with lots of parts of the world, so I mentioned India and Dubai is one of them, there are tons of issues in terms of how tedious it is to buy land and transfer deeds and purchase property. And so how many of you guys are familiar with Burj Khalifa, the big building in Dubai that's one of the largest buildings in the world? They're estimating that the amount of paper per year that the Dubai government sends from entity to entity in terms of signatures, so whether you're moving to Dubai or you're trying to buy a property or you're trying to buy a car or you're sending kids to school and like registering them, just the number of paper that you have to kind of give to all these different entities that get passed around from government entity to entity is like 4 times the size of the Burj Khalifa per year. So they actually quantified that. So that's how when our first engagement in Dubai, or one of our first engagements was with the Dubai Property Group. They're one of the largest property companies, like I guess in the region actually, not just in Dubai. So we kind of created a more seamless process for them, and I think that there's a couple of things that are coming out of it. So one, for the Dubai Property Group, it makes it more seamless that when they're working with contractors and other third-party entities, it's just a more seamless system in terms of uploading documents, verifying them, and doing digital signatures. So you don't physically have to move these documents from entity to entity. And one of the things that the Dubai government's doing, which is going to be a global example, is creating something called blockchain as a service. So it'll be a package that they are providing to each government entity so they can immediately implement blockchain products and do lots of interesting blockchain implementation. So one example of it would be if you're the education department, for instance, you can kind of send or receive documents from different government entities just seamlessly through the blockchain. and it'll be so easy for the different government entities to start implementing it because they would all have received this blockchain as a service package that is really easy to use and seamless. So I think that's exciting because projects like that are, I think just things like that, they're the future. So I think that this is just a prime example of how a government can kind of get their entities on board to use blockchain in a very easy, seamless way. And the other thing that's interesting about Dubai is because it is, you know, they are issuing a mandate, so these government entities are required to use it. So it is interesting to see how seriously the Dubai government takes this, because I mean, all these entities are really learning and being properly trained, so it's been really impressive to see the work that they're doing. And I think what I wanted to do was, I think a lot of you guys are probably familiar just in terms of the difficulty in terms of identifying land. So like the property identity, when you go banks to developers to governments to owners, there's no like unique identifier for property in lots of parts of the world. So I think that blockchain will create a more seamless way for that. There's a lot of payment issues in terms of so many intermediaries involved, and it's a manual process. Like identifying a buyer or seller has to be manual and in person. Dealing with documents in a manual way. There's a lot of error in addition to just the paper waste and travel time, and also interoperability. There's no generic system interface for agencies and companies to access property rights. So at Consensys, we're really proud that we were able to kind of test this out in Dubai and then also come up with a land registry product that we're going to be implementing hopefully in India and other parts of the world. And then I want to show you Pangea. So Pangea is one of the first tokenized blockchain products where you can have fractional ownership, and it's pretty easy and seamless, so I'm going to show a demo.
Hi, welcome to a demonstration of the Pangea platform for creating, managing, and transferring fractional ownership shares in real estate assets. So as we log in here, we're brought to our portfolio page where we can see a listing of all the different properties that we hold some value in. We issue a separate token for each individual property, which you can see over here on the right, as well as the total USD equivalent that we currently own. Up here at the top, you can view aggregated metrics across the entire portfolio, including the total account value, the total returns we've received since we started investing, the rental income that we can expect to have transferred directly into our account each month, and then lastly, the cash we have available. So let's take this cash and go house hunting. Over here on the Properties tab, we can browse through all the different listings that are available on the platform, and if we see one we like this Truman property, we can click into it. Up top, you can see a bunch of summary information about the property, and down below you can see the current rental information and expenses you can expect as a property owner. Over here on the left, you can download the diligence documents associated with this deal, or take the financial statements, put them in Excel, and play around with your own models. So I really like this Truman property, so let's go ahead and buy some tokens. I'm going to be purchasing these tokens from an individual, in this case, Moshe. Let's see, I think I'm going to do 600 tokens for 2 ETH. So I'm going to create this trade request. So this is actually a two-part step. So the first is going to be a transaction submitted to the Ethereum blockchain. So I'm going to sign that with MetaMask here. That's going to create the trade request. And then the second step is then going to be to confirm it. So all right, send this request to Mo. Go ahead and submit that transaction, and trade request sent. All right, let's switch over to Mo's viewpoint. So as Mo, I would have received an email notification that Corbin sent me a trade request. I can log in here, go to my notifications tab, and check it out up here up top. Let's see here. So Corbin wants to offer me 2 ETH in exchange for 600 of my CCT tokens. I kind of like that trade, so I'm going to accept. One less transaction to sign to complete the trade. And we're done. You just exchanged property. That's probably the easiest real estate transaction I've ever seen. So if I go back to my portfolio, you can then see that my account for my Truman tokens have been debited. So, switching over to one last feature that I want to show you guys, if you have the correct access, you can go to the admin dashboard and view all the different tokens in the system, all the assets that have been listed, and then all the users down here that can invest in those assets. You can even add a new token by going here to the top right-hand corner, selecting the asset that the new token is for, filling out some additional information like the name and symbol, and creating it on the blockchain. Simple as that. But let's take a look at a token that's already been out there and has been trading a little bit, like our Truman token. So if we go to the token dashboard, we can see a bunch of summary metrics up top about the particular token, including the overall supply and the market cap, which simply corresponds to the overall value of the underlying Truman asset. Down below, you can see all the different transactions that have taken place for this token, and then you can also view a bunch of reports about it as well. Down here to the left, you can see all the different investors that hold this token and their ownership percentage. And on the right here, you can see a pricing chart for the Truman asset. The green line represents the traditional real estate appraisal value. Doesn't change much over time, considering we didn't do a new appraisal in the past 5 months. And the blue line represents the value at which the token is trading, which is a little bit more dynamic around this appraisal value. So that's it. That's an overview of the Pangea platform. Please let us know if you have any feedback, questions, or comments. We'd love to hear them. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you. That's the end of my presentation. So.
A question? So is Pangea a technology demonstrator, or is it an actual?
No, it's one of the 49 products within Consensys, or one of our 49 projects. So it's an actual project that is currently doing some private pilots, and pretty soon we can make some of those public.
So how do you tackle the regulatory issues from going from county to county, state to state? And as far as fractional ownership and property and recording titles and things like this?
I could get back to you on that because I'm not the person that's the product leads, but they're having pretty good success. And then with some of the places that were piloting this, like for example, Dubai, for instance, they are creating a lot of development policies that are user-friendly specifically to execute technology like this. So that's actually why it'll be interesting, because you're going to see a lot of emerging economies really leapfrog this because they have that flexibility in terms of laws.
So with a decentralized platform like that, there still requires some central authority to be managing stuff such as making sure that the tenants are not trashing the house and that they're paying their rent, that sort of stuff. So how does all that work?
Well, I think it would be similar to having, like for instance, this is allowing you to have fractional ownership in something, and you're a recipient of part of the rent. But I think it is the same way in terms of how real estate transactions are done now, where there are management companies that will help oversee how someone takes care of a property. So I mean, there's still things like that would exist. The blockchain can't solve someone trashing your apartment.
Thank you.